The chalk has been crushing this year, but will it crush again? And do we adjust our approach based on that? I'm here tonight with Devin Knotts and John Lee to talk about that topic and many more. But before we get into the plays position by position, let's go to John for a tour of Las Vegas like we do every week. John, start us off, please.
Yeah, we've got only 2 bye teams this week. Unfortunately, they're 2 of the best teams in the league, led by 2 of the best quarterbacks, no less. Those are the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers. So no Pat Mahomes, no Justin Herbert. As we record this, Lamar Jackson is playing, and we're losing another big quarterback on, was it primetime game Sunday night? Ryan, help me out. We're losing another one.
Oh, Josh Allen.
Yeah.
You guys missed Jacoby Brissett.
Oh, we did.
No, we didn't.
Jacoby.
No, he's on the slate.
It was a Monday night.
Oh,
yeah, so we were going to get to it, but quarterbacks are scant this week, at least high-quality quarterbacks. We were talking a little bit last week about low scoring in the NFL, and the Vegas value chart showing us effectively that. The highest scoring offense this week is projected to score 27.5 points, and that's none other than the Miami Dolphins. So you've got Tua Tagovailoa coming back with Tyreek and company. We'll talk about how you can approach that game coming up against the Detroit Lions, who've been allowing everybody to score a lot of points this year. Just south of Miami, not literally, but figuratively on the Vegas value chart, not too much in the NFL south of Miami. You've got the Eagles, the Vikings, and the Cowboys, all somewhere between 26 and 27 points. 2 of which were heavy favorites, those being the Eagles and the Cowboys in the NFC East. So maybe you want to attract the running game there, and there is some chalk there talking about Ryan's lead-in, whether or not Tony Pollard, with questions around Zeke Elliott, makes us want to gravitate towards seeing Tony Pollard in a full-time role. On the low end, those same defenses are pretty good this week as well, because the Cowboys host the Chicago Bears and poor old Justin Fields, as do the Eagles host your Steelers in the Battle of Pennsylvania. Both of those teams are projected at less than 17 points. So
tough scene in the Battle of Pennsylvania. When the Steelers were good, they lost to the Eagles, 4 and 8 years ago. And this one's probably not going to go the other way. Yeah, that's a tough one. Hey, you say poor old Justin Fields. He had a great game on Monday night, though.
He did. He did. He looked.
That said, that team's a bit of a disaster.
And he did not have Micah Parsons chasing him around the field. But as far as games,
Indeed.
3 games we're looking at: Miami at Detroit. We talked about Las Vegas at New Orleans, and Arizona at Minnesota might be my favorite of those 3.
Okay. Devin, any thoughts on Vegas or games you like before we get to the quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, games that I like. I think it's just sort of a weird week, right? Because you're missing so many great offenses. You're missing the Bengals. You're missing the Bills. You're missing the Chargers. We talked about all of them. But, I sort of like these. I mean, the game that I like is sort of a game that I've been targeting all year, and that's whoever's playing Seattle and Geno Smith. And the Giants-Seahawks game, I think, is not going to be pretty, but there's going to be points put up on the board, and people aren't going to gravitate towards those offenses again outside of Kenneth Walker and probably Saquon Barkley. So certainly an offense that I like. The other shootout potential game that I'm seeing is New Orleans and Las Vegas. So both of these, I think John I wasn't paying attention admittedly, so he probably talked about it.
We'll edit that out.
Yeah. And I do a top 5 passing matchups for each week, and both of these passing defenses are in the bottom 5 for the given week. So I think that you could see a lot of yardage between Derek Carr and Andy Dalton.
Andy Dalton is starting, correct? That's been confirmed by Dennis Allen. Yeah. So he called it an offensive decision. Dennis Allen did, which I suppose
it's offensive.
Picking which quarterback will start for your team is an offensive decision. So thanks for that, Dennis Allen. Dalton's better for Kamara, I think, just, less downfield throws. So that's an interesting thing, but that might be more of a long-term take than a this week take. But yes, Dalton will start for the Saints, and this might mean, based on what Devin just said, that 2 weeks in a row he recommends his favorite running back, Saquon Barkley. Let's move on to quarterbacks, and we kind of hinted.
Wait.
Yeah, go ahead, Devin.
What did Saquon Barkley do last week?
Oh, he did. He performed very well, no doubt about it.
Ding.
Listen, hey, you can be right if it means that you have to kind of swallow it a little bit to play guys that you don't like.
There you go.
So no, but that's an analyst, not a fanalist. So good job on Saquon Barkley. Let's move on to quarterbacks. We mentioned Andy.
One more, if he can interject, I'm going to say that Saquon Barkley hit 2.5x on DraftKings last week.
Okay.
So reasonable floor cash game play. He was. Hasn't scored a touchdown in a minute though.
Let's talk quarterbacks.
Maybe he's due for a touchdown here this week. Who could say? We talked Andy Dalton already. We also, Ryan Tannehill hurt his ankle. A lot of Malik Willis buzz, but looks like Tannehill may play. And Mr. Unlimited, Russell Wilson, who has been very much Mr. Limited this season, appears like he's going to come back and doesn't want Brett Rippon to steal his job. So he may play this week. I don't think those two guys. Not on the slate. Correct. I don't think those two guys matter. How can we not mention him in the guys that weren't on the slate among the Josh Allens and company? Anyways, Matt Ryan has been benched. I think that's the quarterback news that we really need to focus on here this week. Sam Ehlinger will start for Indy. And there have been reports that it is his scrambling that may provide a spark to this offense. And, that is the fantasy football cheat code that we know. So, guys, what are we doing at quarterback? And is Sam Ehlinger part of your plans? Devin, you go ahead and start.
Yeah, I'm playing Sam Ehlinger at $4,000 on DraftKings. I think that this is one of the easiest plays of the year, especially in cash games. Look, Sam Ehlinger at Texas wasn't a great quarterback, but what he could do is run, especially in the red zone. I mean, he had several multi-touchdown games. He had a four rushing touchdown game. He can run. He's going to have to run because I don't know that it's sort of a weird situation where they're benching Matt Ryan, they're in contention, and Frank Reich's just like, we're throwing it all in on Sam Ehlinger. And I don't know that anyone ever thought Sam Ehlinger was going to be a starting quarterback. I don't know that he was a 5th or 6th round pick. They know something to bench Matt Ryan and potentially lose the locker room. So there's been quotes on the offensive line that they're going to keep their thoughts to themselves on the decision. And I don't know that everyone's happy about it. Frank Reich's job is on the line in this move.
Yeah.
And if Ehlinger sucks, he's probably gone. So I tend to think that they know something. He is mobile. He has to be able to throw the ball a little bit or you don't get rid of Matt Ryan. So why not $4,000?
Yeah. From a DFS perspective, I totally agree. I mean, 4,000 is as close to free as it gets. I think the narrative perspective is I think I saw this week that Matt Ryan, if he were hurt by a certain point, was due a bunch of money. And I think, this is a front office move, not a player personnel.
I don't think so, because remember
Carson
Wentz last year? It was like if he played 75% of the snaps, they owed a first-round pick. So, and they played him through the first-round pick. So
they didn't start as unpromisingly as they did this year, though, did they?
I think so. They weren't very good last year.
They were in it at the end, though. Like they were at the point where they could have won their division, but he missed a game due to, I guess, not being vaccinated and then lost the locker room that way. One of many ways Carson Wentz has lost locker rooms. But
half a game out. So the whole thing doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it seems to me, if you look at the offensive line quotes, that strikes me. Those are football guys, and it's just not a football decision, maybe. But anyways, let's get back to this week. And John, the value's there. He's so cheap. Do you feel comfortable playing him? And do you think that the masses will see that name and just not want to click it because it's gross?
They were 3-4 last year entering this same week. So this year they're 3-1, effectively the same start for what it's worth.
Okay, fair enough.
Look, he's a great value this week. I actually don't remember a higher value quarterback this year. And it's all reflective of that $4,000 salary.
Yeah.
I guess what you're going to have to do is look at your roster builds on the high end. Excuse me, because if you play a $4,000 quarterback, you've got some money to spend at the other positions. And on the high end at running back this week, I'm trying to look as I go here. You've got Christian McCaffrey at 8,700, Derrick Henry at 8,400. I got McCaffrey as a fairly low value running back. In fact, he's probably the 5th, 6th, 7th highest scoring guy. So you probably don't want him. And then I'm sure Cooper Kupp is the most expensive guy at the wide receiver. So you're going to have to go up to get guys. And the question is whether or not you like them. I think a case could be made if you build a lineup with Sam Ehlinger, you could almost double up like Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson and feel pretty good about it for cash. And that's probably how I would go. If you don't trust him, I mean, why not go with Tua against Detroit? I don't know it off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure that Detroit is probably a bottom 5 defense against the past in terms of fantasy points allowed this year. I'd love to go over to DVOA and they're number 4. Go over to DVOA and piss off Devin and say that they're like the 30, whatever.
They're probably like the second best.
But those are the two guys for cash. In my eyes, those are the two guys you want to debate, and it really comes down to the decision around Ehlinger is how much do you like the expensive guys that you can pair with him.
Yeah, and that's fair. And our guy Justin Freeman, who does projections, we have many guys that do projections, but Justin, just as an example, on a points per dollar basis, has Tua and Ehlinger tied at 3.8 as a value for points per dollar. So $2,200 difference in their DraftKings salaries, but very similar on the value front, just in a raw points per dollar basis. Devin, anyone else that you're thinking about?
I mean, there's a lot of guys here.
Yeah.
So I think it's a week where you can play like a variety of different players. In a GPP, if you don't want to go to Sam Ehlinger, I think that's fine. I don't know that I love Tua this week. Detroit's playing a little bit better than what they were playing.
Hold on. Last week you said they might just go 1-16 and Dan Campbell might get fired and they might never stop anybody.
No. Their defense is playing a little bit better. Their offense still sucks because it has Jared Goff, but
they've had everybody hurt on their offense.
They've scored
All right,
6 points in the last 2 games.
Ryan's like my wife. He remembers everything that's said and then brings it back a week later and then reminds you of what you said. I love it, Ryan, when it's
only the Devin takes, really.
And maybe I'm just bitter because I had a lot of Dak Prescott last week, and they did look a little bit better, and they shut down Bailey Zappi, whatever that means. So it doesn't mean anything. But we're gonna get into running backs, and there's a Miami running back that I like a lot. So I don't know that I can go Tua and a Miami running back in Raheem Mostert, but I think there's several options here. If I look at the quarterback position. Sorry, Ryan, but Pittsburgh's pass defense isn't very good. And
Jalen need to be sorry to me. I'm not on the defense.
And Jalen Hurts is pretty good. So, I mean, you're going to get Jalen Hurts, I think, at a roster percentage that's not going to be as high as it otherwise could be because people are going to look at right now. I have Jalen Hurts at this isn't the right sheet. So,
got him at 7.
I mean, I have him at 9, so we're right in the same ballpark. But like, Hurts is a guy who could put up a Josh Allen performance with 300 passing yards and a rushing touchdown and break the slate, so to speak. And there's not a lot of quarterbacks that could do that. I do think that the one sneaky quarterback, I talked about Derek Carr, and I like Derek Carr quite a bit. I don't really like Andy Dalton in that game. I like Chris Olave, and we'll talk a little bit about him. One quarterback I do like, and John is going to puke, but Justin Fields is kind of sneaky. 5,200, and if he was any more expensive, I probably wouldn't like him. The matchup is awful. Don't get me wrong, but he's played a lot better the last couple weeks than what he he otherwise has. He's run for 47 yards or more in each of his last 5 games. He's run for 80 yards or more in each of his last 2. Against that defense, he's going to have to run. Like, that's the only path
for his life.
And he has 4.4 speed, and if he can break one, like, you could be in decent business. So don't love him as like any feel safe at all, but as like a long shot play, he's my guy this week.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I'm going to toss one more in that hasn't been mentioned. The game here has been mentioned, but the player has not. And we're splitting the goalposts between the Jalen Hurts and the Sam Ehlinger, which are very wide goalposts in terms of salary. Daniel Jones is playing at Seattle, who stinks. Daniel Jones had 107 yards rushing last week. He has 5 games of 25 rushing yards or more, has 3 rushing touchdowns on the season. He's not going to score you 30 points, although last week he came close. But at 5,700, I don't think you need a full 30 to get there. And this is a guy who they're calling designed runs for. This isn't just scrambles, it's both, right? So the only guys that run more, I think, are, Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts, right? And Brian Daboll, we know, is their head coach. We know he values the quarterback running. It's a weapon for him. He needs to do it. And so Daniel Jones is somebody that I don't know where you guys see him on rostership, but neither of you mentioned him, so I thought he was worth mentioning.
He's going to be low.
Yeah,
about 3%.
Yeah, I mean,
the only issue, maybe John, you're probably going to say is who do you stack him with, right? That's
what I'm going to say about both your quarterbacks. With
Ehlinger
both
too.
of them. I like to play the larger field GPPs, as you both know, and I want to build as much correlation into my lineups in that construction process as possible. So double stacks typically are what wins it. And in both cases, I think you've got one obvious stack. I love Wan'Dale Robinson this week. We'll talk about him in a bit. And I think that Darnell Mooney is a guy that if you're into air yards, he's a guy that's due for some positive regression in terms of touchdown scoring. The problem is I don't know who else you put on the stack beyond those 2 guys with each of your quarterbacks. In terms of double stacks, the quarterback that I like this week in tournaments is Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins.
Okay.
There are 3 guys you can stack him with. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, but also Irv Smith over at the tight end position is coming up pretty hot in the model this week. And that's a game that could go off the rails. I think that the total is 49, which is the 3rd highest on the slate. Both offenses operate pretty quickly. I think it really distills down into whether or not Arizona can move the ball because they've been so hit or miss under Kyler Murray this year. But Kirk Cousins is a guy I like. And then the other 2 names on my list for GPPs are Geno Smith, who I think Devin already mentioned. And maybe we should debate this since we saved a little time with Vegas picks today.
But we're behind. But
are we behind? Okay. Andy Dalton against Las Vegas. I mean, that game could blow up. The problem with Andy Dalton, I love the receivers. There's a couple receivers in that game that come out high, which is why Dalton comes off high. But it's such a crapshoot with Taysom Hill, right? I rarely play the Saints quarterback anymore because of Taysom Hill. I mean, are you guys approaching it the same way?
Andy Dalton is not going to throw 300 yards back-to-back games, so there's no way that I'm playing him this week.
You just told me before the show, last week has no reflection of what happens.
I did. Week. Except redheaded quarterbacks. That's the exception to the rule.
On that note, I'm going to go ahead and just cap off the quarterback section here. Sam Ehlinger and cash is advisable. Devin says it's his guy. John also liked Tua Tagovailoa. GPPs, Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, and the aforementioned redheaded Andy Dalton. And then Devin likes Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts. All right, let's move on to running backs. Before we do, I want to invite and implore you guys listening to please comment on our YouTube video. Tell us the picks you like or dislike. Tell us what you think about Sam Ehlinger. Tell us a random story if you're from Austin, Texas, how you met Sam Ehlinger in a food court. at the University of Texas. Who could say? Anything, any comments are welcome. Let's move on to running backs, folks. Let's go here. We got a lot of news at running back, multiple Jets-related news, which is a thing that we haven't said in years here. Breece Hall out for the season, unfortunately, because he was just destroying people and an awesome talent. So you'd think Michael Carter is all systems go until the Jets trade for James Robinson, which impacts the Jags as well, and Travis Etienne. James Conner is practicing 2 limited sessions, I think, this week, so likely to play. In Carolina, ripple effect from the Christian McCaffrey trade. Chuba Hubbard appears questionable. DeAndre Swift, I think, is on the positive side of questionable. Back to Arizona again, Darrell Williams is questionable. In Denver, I don't think many care because of that offense, but Mike Boone is not playing and wasn't getting carries anyways. In Baltimore, never mind. They play tonight. And then in Seattle, we have Travis Homer, who could maybe throw a wrench in the Kenneth Walker situation. So we'll talk about Kenneth Walker again, as he's been, white hot lately. And what are we going to do with him this week? John, why don't you start? Maybe not on Kenneth Walker, but just on who you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get to a point this week. It's Thursday night when we record this. Most people know. Right now, it looks like, but is not yet decided or officially decided.
Oh, yeah.
That Zeke
Elliott, perhaps the
Elliott,
biggest news that I didn't even mention.
Zeke Elliott looks like he will be inactive this weekend as a home favorite against the Chicago Bears and a big favorite at that, 10 points. These are the games we love to attract running backs who are going to get the bell cow role. And it very well could be that Tony Pollard gets that role this week at an affordable price of $6,100. He's going to be the chalk of the slate in my eyes if this ends up happening, which I think is more likely than not. He's the kind of the free space that you've got this week, the Josh Jacobs of last week. So just go ahead and slot him in for cash games. I think for tournaments, he might be a different discussion depending on how popular he gets. I think for me, the threshold is somewhere around 40%. If he gets above 40%, you've got a fade and vice versa. The other 2 guys on my cash game list are Alvin Kamara at 7,100 and Josh Jacobs once again at 7,500. Both look like good values this week in their respective matchups against Las Vegas and New Orleans in the same game, no less.
All right, Devin.
Yeah, I mean,
anyone else you like? Or
I would say
like?
Tony Pollard's going to be about 50% rostered on FanDuel at $6,300. I think the price will be a little more prohibitive on DraftKings. Probably he'll get somewhere into like the 30-35% range with that $6,100 price tag protecting him. There are some more options than there were last week, but my favorite guys, John mentioned, I think Pollard's a great play. I think Josh Jacobs is my top play in cash. I mean, the guy is just getting volume that no other running back on this slate is getting. And in New Orleans, run defense really isn't, like, historically it has been very, very strong. This year it just hasn't been. So I anticipate that game could be a shootout game, and I like Josh Jacobs quite a bit. And then looking a little bit deeper, I know we talked a little bit about Mostert and him being a sneaky play this week. But I'm trying to find a guy who I really like that could go under the radar. And I don't want to do it, but I sort of like DeAndre Swift as a GPP play if he's active. I mean, how many weeks are they going to keep this guy out? As far as, like, if he's back, I think he could get some time as the starting running back. Keep an eye on him, see if he's practicing on Friday. But he's a guy that certainly has upside that very few running backs on this slate have. And then one last name that I'll throw out there. It's a weird week, right? Because we have Pollard, we have Jacobs, Rhamondre Stevenson is going to be popular, and Alvin Kamara is going to be popular. And then and we talked about, or the title of this is "The Sport Has Changed," which I did just want to touch on really quickly. Running back success in the first 7 weeks of this year is higher than it's ever been, and not ever, but in the last several years, you have more teams averaging 5 yards per carry. You have more running backs who are critical. Quarterbacks, we are seeing less and less 300-yard passing games. So picking the right running backs is vital to success, and you want to make sure that you're spending money at the running back position to get touches. So, I look at like 2, 3, 4 years ago, and we were talking about guys like J.D. McKissick and hoping that he got caught like 4 passes and just got to like 9 or 10 points. You really need like these big games from these running back positions to win something substantial. So, I mean, my running back pool is pretty limited. It's Walker, Pollard, Jacobs, GPPs. I like Saquon Barkley. I'm out on Christian McCaffrey because of the unpredictability nature of what his volume is going to be. And then I like Raheem Mostert going down at 5,900. Below 5,900, I'll tell you, there's nothing that I like.
Yeah.
Nothing.
So you mentioned 2-3 years ago, you were hoping to get a JD McKissick. Well, 5-6 years ago, I'll give you another name. And this is
James White.
No. Flip it back the other way, right? Like where you needed 3 running backs who were studs, right? Like remember David Johnson.
Yeah.
Right. Like we were fine. We were trying to jam it in like 3 running backs that were over 8K because that was just how to win, especially in cash games. Not 2, 3, but probably maybe 6, 7 years ago. I'm trying to remember now in my head how long ago that was. David Johnson seemed like he played 25 years ago, but it wasn't that long. But it was like Zeke Elliott as a rookie and second-year player. It was David Johnson, and I forget the other guys, but there was 4 or 5, and
in there too.
Derek, you wanted 3 of them,
yeah.
and any combo.
Todd Gurley was in
there.
there.
Yeah, Todd Gurley was in the mix, right? So we're taking people back now, right? But like we are back to that point.
But name one guy under 5,900 that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not.
I'm
not. You mentioned Kenneth Walker, Devin. You've had some takes on Kenneth Walker. Are you playing him this week? What
cash? Yes, I think he's fine.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
He's going to get touches. My concern is, and I brought it up 2 weeks ago, and I sort of look like an idiot. Clip this and say that I said that I look like an idiot.
Pick out sort of.
Yeah, make it a meme or whatever kids are doing these days. But yeah, I look like an idiot because they've won the last 2 games. But what I said is my concern is he doesn't catch passes. I mean, he didn't at Michigan State. He didn't, I believe he was at Wake Forest before Michigan State. And he hasn't in the NFL. He has two pass catches in 2 games. If the Giants are winning, I have concerns that he's not going to hit GPP value.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to get 20 to 25 touches. If he gets 17, you're sort of in trouble.
Unless one of them goes for a 50-yard touchdown.
Yeah, sure, right? But like
obviously, yeah.
Well, I played devil's advocate here. You're right. Like he's not caught a lot of passes, but in both games, I think they've been winning throughout. So there's no reason to be throwing to the running back. I mean,
first quarter, first half, like you don't throw to the running back at all in a close game.
He there was some tweets that I saw this week about his route participation, and I think the number was 65% last week. So I mean, he's moving out of the backfield on passing plays.
Any love for Dameon Pierce? I know we didn't say his name, but 90 yards in 3 straight games, like maybe cash viable. I mean, I think if you're gonna talk game scripts, it's interesting that you might recommend him. Although he has caught 13 balls in the last 3 games. So right. So
yeah,
they could be losing.
The 5th highest value on my board.
Yeah.
The problem with the entire running back position, at least as of Thursday night, is there's only like 2, maybe 3 running backs that come out really high in terms of GPP value. Tony Pollard is one, and I think that completely disappears as programs like this come out today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then the other one, Devin's already mentioned, and I don't think that's going to change. That's Raheem Mostert. I think Raheem Mostert's the the best GPP play of the slate at this position, because I think 2 is going to get super popular, as is Tyreek. And then people are going to say, well, I can get Jalen Waddle, who's looked pretty good this year, for cheaper. And they're not going to be looking at Raheem Mostert. He's the guy that really stands out. All the other players, Rhamondre Stevenson is fairly high up there. We already talked about Jacobs and Kamara. We talked about Walker. All those guys are right around where they should be. So, entering the weekends, look at Tony Pollard, look at Raheem Mostert. I think a bad play, for what it's worth, as of tonight, is Saquon. Saquon is he's projected to be on about 20% of rosters, and I've got him somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12% likely to hit GPP value. So I'd be fading him this week.
So,
all right.
Well, I'm going to take a minute. John, can you just tell people what you mean by Raheem Mostert is the best play on this slate? That doesn't mean he's going to score the most points or he's the safest play, right?
No, he's the guy that is most likely to differentiate your rosters for GPPs and deliver the value that you need to win a GPP. It's different than cash games. Cash games about sheer value, ownership, percent roster does not matter. But when you're talking about GPPs, the thing that matters most, obviously, are the points scored. That goes without saying. But the thing that matters most then is how are you differentiated from your competitors? And this week, as of tonight, and I think it'll hold, because I don't think people love Raheem Mostert. He's going to be one of the sharpest plays of the weekend. And there are several sites that offer you the ability, and I would urge anybody listening to do it. Look at what other sharp players are playing in these large field GPPs. And I bet you're going to see that Raheem Mostert's on average 35% owned in those sharp guys lineups.
Okay. Yeah. And so that's a good point, Devin. Thanks for asking that, because there's two things. There's who's going to score the points, and then there's who's going to get the unique points, right? So, we could start Matt Breida and be really unique, right? Or who am I looking at? Khalil Herbert, or anybody, right? But who's going to get you the bang for the unique buck? And I think Mostert does have that upside. We saw him Sunday night, even in a 16-10 game. The guy delivered a lot of value, right? 100 yards rushing, I believe, and a touchdown receiving. He's very clearly the guy in Miami. They're a team that's favored at home, and these are all the things we look for. But there's also a lot of other running backs on this slate that have those things that we look for. So, which would make him unique. So let's move on. And I want to flip the wide receiver section on its head, just a little bit, just in the vein of, uniqueness and GPPs and the things that we've kind of talked about here, guys. So let's go receivers. Name your cash plays, because I think that's important to set a baseline. But let's kind of leave off the justification for cash plays. I think everybody knows it's volume, it's targets, it's opportunities, right? So real quick, just hammer the cash guys. But then if you have a differentiator, let's filibuster if you're going to on the differentiator guys more so than the cash guys. John, let's start with you.
Cash guys, Tyreek against Detroit, already talked about him.
Okay.
Chris Olave in that game in New Orleans against Las Vegas. Garrett Wilson is going to get some additional opportunity this week. He's kind of your salary relief guy at 4,200 against New England. And I hate to say it, but I think the value is there for DJ Moore against Atlanta. It's who else is going to get the ball there? He's by far the best player on the offense. So trying to adhere to your guidance and not justify, but
he's going to get targets.
Yeah,
that's it. He was, I think, darn near a 30-40% share last week. I don't know exactly, but it was awfully high. Devin, same thing, and then we'll fly to guys we should talk more about.
DJ Moore, Chris Olave, George Pickens, and at the top end,
we need to talk about that one.
We can certainly talk about that one. Do you want me to talk about it now?
As a cash game play? Yeah,
as a cash game play, I like George Pickens quite a bit. He has 6 catches in 2 of his last 3 games. I think that Pittsburgh is going to be losing the entire game.
Oh, before it starts.
And Najee Harris is Trent Richardson 2.0. So, I mean, him and Kenny Pickett are really tight. They want to develop, and they're in a talent development mode. They're going to throw the ball 40 plus times, and I think Kenny Pickett gets 8 to 9 targets this week at 4,700. Look, I mean, Garrett Wilson is fine. I liked him more when he had Joe Flacco at quarterback, but he has 4 catches for 24 yards, 1 for 8, and 3 for 27.
Yeah.
I look at Pickens and 6 for 61 and 6 for 83 against the Bills. Like, the Bills, they were getting blown out the entire game too. So I think he's a guy that could hit 12, 13 points without a touchdown. And
even last week, without the 6 catches, he did score. So I'm
not going to debate some of the metrics that Devin just referenced, but where does Justin Freeman have those 2 guys projected? On my model, I've got Garrett Wilson at 2 points higher than Pickens, and he's $500 cheaper, which is why it comes out a lot better for me.
Justin has Pickens at 8.9, 8.4, and Wilson at Garrett Wilson at 13.9.
13.9.
That can't be right.
Yeah, well, I mean that
am I missing am I missing?
God,
I hate to admit it in front of our audience here. Am I missing a Jets wide receiver core injury or a shift in their offense to where Breece Hall's out, so are we just going to start throwing the ball a lot? Is that the idea?
Could be. Can I just say one player not to play?
Please.
Stop playing Curtis Samuel, for the love of God. Like, people just keep playing him, and I don't understand why. He had 2 good games in weeks 1 and 2, and he scored 2 touchdowns. He hasn't done anything since. Stop playing him. Now he's going to score 2 touchdowns.
Yep. Hey, where'd he go to? Where'd he go to college?
I just marked him onto my roster.
Where'd he go to college?
Same place as Garrett Wilson.
Oh yeah, that's right. Same place as you. Interesting that we're now in the portion where we're 2 weeks on Saquon Barkley and we're off Ohio State players. So Devin means business when that happens. John, tell me about some guys that maybe are off the radar and should be on.
Yeah, I sound like Devin here, but Tyler Lockett again. I mean, I don't understand.
Here we go.
I mean, he's I don't get it. What is he? 5,500 this week? 65.
No, he's 65. At least he broke the 6K barrier.
Yeah, and obviously DK Metcalf not available. He should be a lot higher. That said, early week percent rostered looks too low for him. I told you already, I like both the receivers in Minnesota, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. I think they're going overlooked. And then 2 more names. Wan'Dale Robinson against Seattle, I think, is an excellent play this week. He's one of the higher value guys. The only thing about Wan'Dale Robinson, I just don't know he gets that 100-yard bonus on DK because he's not the type of guy that's going to run those long routes and break something. He's really got to get it through volume or sneaky little 3-yard touchdowns. And the last one is Jalen Waddle, because I think Tyreek is going to get super popular, and that may bring some extra value to Jalen Waddle against Detroit at 6,700.
Why is Tyreek becoming so popular? Like, I understand he's a good play, but
I just think it's the floor.
Well, it's also, I don't think, I just pulled it up. No receiver in the NFL has more targets.
It's just a target. It's just a target play.
And upside.
But he's like trending 25 to 30%, which just like seems crazy to me when Devontae Adams is the same price. Like in a potential shootout game, maybe that's the pivot to go to. I mean, Tyreek Hill has been fine this year, but he certainly has upside, right? So 10 for 160, 12 for 177.
Yeah.
He's only scored a touchdown in one game this year. I guess you're chasing that huge yardage performance, which I get, but
you
at
could
30%, I think
you could argue that because he's only scored in one game this year, maybe that's a reason to play him, because last 4 games, week 4, 10, and these are receptions, not targets. 10, 7, 12, 7. I mean, there's a floor, and we know that Tyreek Hill has a ceiling. So I mean, I can see it.
Yeah.
35% seems absurd, but it does provide a bit of comfort, right? It's not the level of Cooper Kupp comfort, but you could argue that the ceiling is higher, especially this year with everything.
Ceiling's
going
definitely
on
there.
With the Rams.
The ceiling's definitely there. I just think at 25 to 30%, I don't think he's a slam dunk to be the top rostered player, which he's trending that way to be. Like I mentioned, Devontae Adams I like a lot. Cooper Kupp, at 9,600, I think he's too expensive. Justin Jefferson's interesting. So Arizona has a really sneaky good run defense, which Jefferson has that upside that Tyreek Hill, if you're looking to pivot off of him. And John mentioned Kirk Cousins already, so I think that he's certainly in play as well.
Yeah, with you there. So let's recap real quick. I mean, it seems, this week there's a lot more. The running back plays are obvious and the receiver plays are plentiful, we'll say. So you just got to pick the right ones. Tyreek Hill is that safety net. Chris Olave, both of our guys like, and I agree. Garrett Wilson is maybe John's cheap guy, and George Pickens is Devin's. Both like DJ Moore. And then we also have Tyler Lockett, Justin Jefferson, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Waddle as GPP leverage plays for John. I don't really have anything to add there other than, Cooper Kupp would be nice. I just don't know that you can or need to get there. I'll be interested to see how the Rams are coming off the bye. Obviously, they were, trending towards horrendous going into it. So let's, keep an eye on that for future weeks.
Scary Terry. Going back to Terry.
We're going back to Terry McLaurin. Devin's going on the Terry McLaurin crusade. He Devin recommended him last week, and John, with disdain, said no. And both guys think that they are right, which is interesting. Just because Terry McLaurin went for 79 and a touchdown. Yeah,
he's from Indianapolis, going up against the Colts, who have a good run defense, and he's the top guy there. And he and Heineke are close, so I think he has upside at 6K.
Just trying to make the Ohio State.
John, does he make your model this week or no?
That's what I'm looking for right now.
Devin's just trying to get back to the Ohio State Booster Club and just trying to make sure that he's okay.
Right now, he's borderline for making the cut. But let's make a bet, a friendly bet. I mean, unless you want to put money on it, we don't have to. But I think Curtis Samuel outscores Terry McLaurin on a points per dollar basis this week. You want to bet?
I will shave my head if that happens.
All right.
I don't need any repercussion bets.
All right.
But I will. I won't go down to like the skin, but I'll go pretty short.
Wow, and not even any upside. Like John has to face any misery.
Oh, for what it's worth, just winning the bet will be enough. But if he wants to shave his head, I'm more than happy to let him.
Yeah, but what if you lose? You got to do something. I mean,
no, I don't.
No, I'll enjoy if he loses, I will enjoy a cocktail on the show next week, which is something I haven't done in probably a year and a half.
Okay, so in a lot of people's minds, that's an enjoyment.
That's a normal thing, but
for you, that kind of is a punishment. So okay,
with a 2-year-old kid, there's not a lot of drinking time, so I will sip a nice glass of whiskey when I win next week.
All right, that's fair.
All right. So wow. You heard it here, folks. Now, I shamelessly ask for engagement at all times, but now that we've thrown a shaved head bet on the line, please, by all means, tell us what side of that bet you are on. Give us a like. Give us a dislike if you're afraid to see Devin's bald head. This, by the way, for the record, this is not the first time in the history of this show that Devin has offered to shave his head, and I believe it was executed at one point, right? So
it was.
Please engage. For the record, I'm rooting for Terry McLaurin because Devin with a shaved head is just not going to get us any female viewership whatsoever. So please, by all means, engage with us on the show here and comment on the YouTube video. We're really happy to have you all, and check out our content at footballguys.com/DFS. While Devin is grooming his hair that he still has, he's also making projections for players and for percent rostered and things of that nature. So check us out. We have a lot of good content. Let's move on to tight ends, guys. I'm not going to do news because there's not a lot relevant other than Devin's guy, David Njoku.
Not on the slate for the third time.
Sadly, also not on the slate, but also out. So what are we doing? You're right. He's on Monday night.
Let John name the name that I have no clue who it is for like the fourth week in a row. It's probably Juwan Johnson this week, but let's see what he comes up with.
So Adam Troutman, since we are talking about Juwan Johnson, Adam Troutman was out on Thursday night when Johnson had to blow up, and he is questionable and might return. I don't know if that changes John's mind at all on Juwan Johnson, but we'll talk next week about David Njoku and Harrison Bryant. John, your thoughts on tight ends this week?
I'm just, is Devin breaking my chops about Greg Dolchicks from last week?
No.
Oh, okay.
Not at all.
All right.
Had a nice game.
The wide receiver, the tight ends that I've got on my list for cash game this week is Tyler Higbee, 4,200. He continues to get quite a few targets. Last game being the exception, he only had 2, but before that it was 11, 9, 4, 14, 10. At 4,200, he's a guy that I like against San Francisco. If you're punting the position, and I never mind punting the position, Noah Fant against the Giants is 2,800.
Yeah. And I think a little bit of Higbee's lack of targets in that game before the bye. He was hurt, missed practice going into it. So perhaps it was a bit of
he went from 97% down to 78%. It's a good call.
Yeah. So I think there's something to that. And people may see that and say, hey, he didn't get a lot of targets. Then he was on a bye. It's a little out of sight, out of mind thing from a percent rostered perspective. Devin, what do you think about those calls and others?
I think they're fine. I think Higbee's a fine cash game play.
Yeah.
You can certainly play him. I do like Dallas Goedert just a little bit more at 5K. I think he's somebody who is a little more volatile than Higbee, but when he certainly has 80, 90, 100-yard upside, which for a tight end is something that I'm looking for. I've talked about this Philadelphia team beating Pittsburgh quite easily. And I think that he's someone that if you can afford him, the question is going to be whether or not you can. He's a guy that certainly has upside to be the top tight end on this slate. For a GPP play, I can't quit. Well, I guess it's getting to a point where Kyle Pitts has been so bad.
Wow.
And here we go.
I mean, nobody.
Cut. So, recording over.
Timeout. So
no, I'm with you. I'm just kidding.
I've already said I'm an idiot. So how much? And I'm gonna have a shaved head next week, and it's a whole thing. But we were talking about, you guys were pumping up Kyle Pitts when he's like 5,700.
Yeah,
he's 4K. At some point, as a GPP play, nobody let me look up his percent rostered. He's at.
He could catch a 4-yard pass and take it for 40.
I have him at 6% rostered when Will Dissly is 6.5%.
Oh boy. Yeah.
6% at 4K. Did we ever think Kyle Pitts would be at this spot? No,
he's going to be higher than that.
Probably.
10%. I still like the play, but I think he's going to be 10%.
But week 2, I said, hey, in week 8, Kyle Pitts is going to be 4K at 10% rostered. You're like, give me 100% of him.
You find that clip, and I will shave my head.
No, I'm saying a theoretical, right?
Oh, okay.
If I came to you and said in week 2, 6 weeks from now, Kyle Pitts is going to be $4,000. And he's only going to be 10% rostered. I guarantee your model breaks because it's just like, this is like the ultimate play.
Yeah.
And like, here we are, and none of us love it, but
we've got some data suggesting that team simply doesn't throw the ball. And so, I'm with you. Everything you're saying makes sense, but I also could see if if you just wanted to pass them by, there's a lot of new data. If you're doing the week 2 to week 8 thing, a lot of things have happened in the middle of that, right? That make it. And that's why it's a GPP play, like no doubt about it. Let me offer another guy. I've badmouthed my favorite team here quite a bit tonight, but Pat Freiermuth is a guy who's catching a lot of passes. He has a 5 for 75 game under his belt. It was in week 1. He has a 7 for 85 game under his belt. In the Buffalo game where they were getting blown out, he was 2 for 12, got concussed early. And then Zach Gentry, who's just not a good football player, went 5 for 43 in the second half. Last week, Freiermuth was 8 for 75 in a tight game, but also in catch-up mode at Miami on Sunday night. 0 touchdowns yet this year, which is interesting. I think this team is not fans of Chase Claypool. He's in trade rumors, and I think that's for a reason. Dating back to the preseason, George Pickens, did great, but like fairly easily overtook Chase Claypool in terms of the eyes of what the team thought. And so, there's a lot of mouths to feed in Pittsburgh, and not someone to feed them, in that Kenny Pickett and Matt Canada are conspiring to not make this a good offense. But Pickett likes Freiermuth, and so did Mitch Trubisky, which tells me he's earning targets. If it's 2 different quarterbacks and he's still doing it with both. So maybe the upside's not there. He's not going to be a Kyle Pitts guy and take score 2 touchdowns, but maybe he will, right? So a lot of targets, a lot of volume. And I see it in different types of game scripts. The Jets game, he was 7 for 85. That was a pretty neutral game. There've been games where he's trailing and they've done fine too. So something to offer. And he's 300 cheaper than Higbee. He's 100 cheaper than Pitts. So I don't know where he shows on percent rostered or anything, guys. But
he's in that 6-7% range. You have a bunch of tight ends in that same range. He's in the Dalton Schultz category for me. Like he's a guy who could bust out. Do I overly love him? No. Do I dislike him? No.
Okay, fair enough.
I've got him as the second most popular tight end this week, for what it's worth.
Okay. What percent do you have him at?
All that volume, I guess, will do it.
14.5.
Who do you have as the top? Higbee?
Yeah.
14.5. That okay. I didn't think 14.5 seems like quite a bit. And John, you mentioned earlier Irv Smith, 400 cheaper. If he's 400 cheaper and less than Freiermuth, I'm going there too. Arizona is very susceptible through the middle. So Irv Smith was the other guy I had written down here. So let's move on to defenses, guys, unless any other thoughts on tight end.
Just find a tight end that actually has upside.
Yeah.
Unless you're stacking Kirk Cousins, I don't know that there's upside with Irv Smith. I look at tight ends that have upside. Freiermuth, fine. Goedert, fine. Higbee, Hawkinson, Schultz, Ertz, Pitts, Kittle. Outside of that, am I missing anybody?
I think the thing though is that the upside comes with the price, right? So that's the tough part.
I mean, I think Devin's at some level you're both right, but you've got to be able to get 4x on a 4x on a salary above 4K and 5x on below that. And I think like Irv Smith can do that, right? What is he? He's 3,500. He's got to get, I think he's got to get 15 fantasy points to get you there. And I think he can have a 4-catch, 40-yard touchdown, and that gets you there. But he's right. I mean, I don't know. Will Disley does nothing for me at 3,200. Cole Kmet, 2,900. These guys should just be X'd out of your pool because they're never going to do anything.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Noah Fants of the world, right? That was a good call earlier, John. He's 2,800, but at least he's an athlete, right? He can catch a 10-yard crosser and take it for a 30-yard touchdown, right? I think that's the Devin point. So
and look at red zone targets for tight ends. I think that those are valuable, especially Zach Ertz Zach Ertz is like top 6 in the league in red zone targets of all players. So if you're looking at a multi-touchdown game for a guy who could be under rostered, he leads the team in targets by a considerable margin. So like if you're thinking about a tight end in a game, think about a player who's actually going to get targets in the red zone.
Yeah.
And he's an air yards guy right now too. He's hot on the air yards list.
Zach Ertz is, John?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, let's move on to defenses. And I don't know who the lock of the week is, but let's try to keep it short. I mean, defense is so tough. Washington looks good, super cheap, but what do you guys like on the defensive side?
I think it's Washington or the 49ers.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. I would agree. I mean, you're 2,600 Washington, 3,100 49ers. The Rams, I referenced it earlier. I'd love to see how they're coming out of the bye, but frankly, they've been dreadful. They've started a different O-line combination, I think, every single game. They throw to one guy. He's tremendous, but if they don't throw to him, they're probably getting sacked, and their running game stinks. So that's a recipe for disaster. The 49ers against the Rams earlier this year, absolutely smashed. They 15, I see, points, scored a defensive touchdown, 2 takeaways, 7 sacks, gave up nine total points. So not a home game this time around, but certainly a good matchup. And then, Washington's facing a rookie quarterback making his first start. So that seems like a good recipe too. Ehlinger is going to run around like we referenced earlier, but is he really going to, I think that's a good floor play there with Washington, right? You're not going to have a spot where they're going to lose points. I don't think Sam Ehlinger's putting up 45. And if he does, I'm not going to say I'll shave my head. I'm far too vain for that, but I'll do something equivalent. So I think those are the two. The other one, it's super expensive, but so it's probably GPP only, but the Eagles against the Steelers, we talked about it earlier. Eagles are hosting the Steelers. Really tough spot for Pittsburgh. Philly coming off of a bye. Pretty explosive situation there. So don't sleep on that one. And then also in the same light, Dallas is 4,000 hosting Chicago. So that's another one to look at. Just GPP spend up to be contrarian kind of deal. Any disagreements there or other thoughts that I missed, guys?
Miami as a GPP play is going to be very few people are going to take them, and Jared Goff's not very good.
Yeah, don't hate that either. Good call.
I think the Patriots are going to get popular against the Jets. The Jets losing Breece Hall, it rubs a lot of the shine off of that offense. We'll see how they'll respond, right? They got James Robinson in, and we'll see. But I think they're going to be one of the more popular defenses on the week. I do think that the Giants at 2,800, one of the better GPP plays against Seattle. I do expect, and I got to be careful here because I already talked about Geno being a GPP play, and then I'm going to go on the other side and say that the defense is also a GPP play on the other side, but nobody's going to touch the Giants defense because Seattle has scored so many points because of how bad their defense is. But this could be one of those things where they give up 24, 28 points and they have a pick six, and the Giants give you 5x value simply because of sloppy quarterback play.
Yeah. That makes sense too. I like that. I mean, there's, we all thought Arizona Seattle would be a shootout a few weeks ago, and I think the final of that game was 19-9. So games don't always go as scripted. Guys, let's move on to final thoughts here. I don't know if it's a stack, if it's a game theory thing we haven't thought of, or if it's succinct and nothing at all. Devin, why don't you lead us off? Anything we missed that you had written down for us?
Nothing. Just a reminder: pay up for running backs. The bottom end is actually. I do have one thing.
Oh, here we go.
Start good players.
Play good players. I mean, it's that. I don't know why we talk for an hour. Just play good players. John, how do you follow that?
So I gave you all the players I thought you should play throughout the show. 3 guys I think you should fade for the opposite reason of what I gave you with Raheem Mostert, and that's a combination of value, likelihood to achieve GPP, and then projected rostership. Those 3 players that are coming out terrible in my model: Saquon Barkley, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and another Brown, AJ.
Okay. Interesting. Just due to projections versus projected roster, right?
Effectively, that's
Yeah.
the majority of what it comes down to. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think I certainly think those guys, especially the latter 2, the receivers, are going to score some fantasy points. But yeah, relative to salary and expectation and how many people have them, I can see that. So
it's the game.
It's good. I like that you both throughout the show, we talk about who to play, but I like we're also talking about who not to play. So I think that's a good value add. So thank you both for doing that throughout the show. Devin, anything else before we close?
Don't play Curtis Samuel.
All right. We've got a shaved head bet. Please comment on how much you're rooting for Curtis Samuel or not, if you don't want to see Devin's bald head. I'm personally rooting for Terry McLaurin, just to be fair. But it would be great content if Samuel goes out. I want Samuel to have, like, if he does win, I want it to be like 4 touches and 2 touchdowns.
That would be
that would be the ultimate. He was right, but he lost. It would just be great.
Let's put a thread in, a comments where people can vote up or down on that comments what they want. We'll do that.
Yeah, let's do. So for first person to listen to this, go comment and just comment simply Samuel or McLaurin, and then everybody else kind of reply to it. Let's do that and see.
I'm not shaving my head if there's an injury.
That's fair.
All right, yeah, that's fair. All right, both have to play a full game for the bet to count. Okay, we're with that. Okay. So on that note, please go comment, go engage. I think this is the most kind of exciting opportunity to do that all year. On your way to doing that, also open up another tab and check out footballguys.com/DFS. We also have a heck of a lot of good season-long content too. I know this show's DFS centric, but the season-long guys, the old traditional stalwarts of the industry, do a wonderful job here as well. So with that, I'll say on behalf of John Lee, who's yawning, it's officially bedtime, and Devin Knotts with the Clark Griswold throwback jersey there. That is an absolute value add this year to the background. On behalf of those guys, I'm Ryan Hester saying good night and thanks for being a football guy.